Cameron Bishop, what's your superpower and how do you serve your mission to help others?
Superpower-wise, I'd have to say resilience. One of my favorite sayings is an old Japanese expression that goes, fall down 7, get up 8.
Nice.
And
Flywheel leadership is about, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, in terms of serving others, my appearance on podcasts is kind of my mission these days, and that is to help business owners exit their companies when it's time, because it's their primary source of generational wealth.
Very nice. Flywheel leadership is about discovering and practicing the leadership systems that bring out the best in each of us and our teams. What's a story from your experience that comes to mind that exemplifies exceptional or unique styles in leadership?
Well, I've seen a lot over my career, having run small companies and large companies. But I think one of the things that I've learned the most and that I have not seen in other instances is the desire for collaboration, the desire to be what is referred to as a servant leader. I was engaged to do a 3-year contract to turn around a very, very troubled $60 million 501c3 company. And the previous management of that business for 30-some years was a very secretive, insular type of operation that was very self-centered in nature. And the company was kind of rotten. There's an expression that the fish rots from the head, and that was a perfect example of that. So the board engaged me to come in, gave me carte blanche to do a turnaround on that business, and you sometimes have to cut out the cancer. So that involved taking out about the top 9 or 10 executives in the company, doing a transformation in culture, which the workforce really was challenged with for a long time. But we turned the company into a collaborative business model. And when people have the ability to offer input, it's amazing what kind of things can happen.
Completely agree with that. Collaboration, servant leadership, I feel strongly about those concepts being a big part of success in business and, doing right by people as well along the way. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your business, Cameron. Tell us about Raincatcher and what your focus is there.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. So our firm, Raincatcher, which is an unusual name. Our theory is it's easier to catch rain than it is to make rain. So our firm is based in Denver. We are what is referred to as a lower middle market investment bank, meaning we target helping business owners when they decide it's time to sell their company. And that's a very complex process. And our clients are all sort of in the $2 million to $10 million in EBITDA profits range. We have clients all over the country, all 50 states. We are what we refer to as industry agnostic. So we represent business owners in about every business sector you could think of, except perhaps oil and gas and agriculture. So SaaS platform software, digital e-commerce, any kind of business service you can think of, all the way up through heavy construction, road building, ditch digging, and that sort of thing. So as I mentioned, the business owners today have a unique challenge. There's whatever it is, 10,000 baby boomers turn age 65 every day. Many of them own companies, either first generation, second, or even third. But the challenge they face today is virtually none of their children want to come into the family business. So when it's time for them to retire, they're left with no other choice but to sell the company. And I've always been a believer, Graham, in know how to do well and do it. Know what you don't know how to do well and hire an expert to do it for you. And selling a company is an extremely complicated, long-term, emotional roller coaster ride of a process. So these owners are always best served if they have a professional M&A person to help them through them.
Makes sense. Cameron, when it comes to helping business owners prepare for the sale and then the actual sales process, can you tell us a little bit more about your role in that process on kind of each section of that?
Yeah. Well, we are not a consulting firm that would, kind of walk them through, hold their hand, do an engagement. We have some referral sources that do that. But in the last year, I've probably spoken to 120 business owners from all walks of life and industries. And there are very common denominators among many of these businesses. And the basic things we see are one, really poor accounting or terrible accounting in a lot of cases. And a business isn't sellable without proper accounting. And by that, I mean monthly income statements and balance sheets, and they're structured on a GAAP accrual accounting basis. Second thing we see, this ties in very well, we'll dive deeper into this, Graham, is around leadership. One of the huge issues we face with these business owners is that the company has what we refer to as owner dependency, meaning they're the key or only source of knowledge in the company. They're very often the only source or primary source of customer contact and customer relationships. And when buyers look at buying a company, buyers, interestingly, are open to taking on risk. That's why they're doing a deal. But at the same time, they're extremely risk averse. So when they see some of these red flags like bad accounting, owner dependency, it's a case of, the old proverbial, if the owner gets hit by a bus today, what happens to the company tomorrow? Yeah. And the leadership aspect of that is the vast majority of them have no succession plan, never thought about a succession plan, and they have no one in training or as a number two right-hand person who can step into their role. And one of their challenges is they're selling their company because at some point in the near future, they want to retire. But buyers will say, no, you're going to have to stay on. You're going to have to sign a contract and continue operating the business for a negotiated period of time. So that's a key factor. We'll talk more about some of the reasons why. And then next is customer concentration. The litmus test is anytime a business is dependent on revenue from any one client doing more than 20% of their business, that's an automatic turnoff for buyers. Same thing with a vendor dependency. I had a client actually in Canada, fascinating business. Guy was making money hand over fist, but he used a raw material that was only supplied by one company. He had no contract with that supplier. And if that supplier shut him off, he had no business, literally. And buyers couldn't get over that. And then lastly is around learning how to read and use your accounting statements as a management tool, and especially their gross profit margins. There are a lot of criteria around gross profit that buyers look at, and it can be an immediate turnoff. So those are some of the big ones. There's unique ones in every industry, but those are thematically the ones that impact the ability to sell and the valuation the most.
Makes a lot of sense. So let's talk briefly on what is it about that transition from when a business owner doesn't really realize or actively think about that they are going to exit this business one way or another at some point, right? But I won't go into all the reasons why, but it's going to happen at some stage, right? Whether, they're 65 or they're 85 or even older, right? It's going to happen. So why do you think the reason is that business owners just don't think about that actively? Is it more of just, we're busy and we don't think about the future as much as we should? Or is it a denial on that coming? Like, what do you see as a reason why not facing that reality that is coming.
Well, Graham, you're very right. Every business owner is going to leave his or her company one way or another, and they have a choice. They can either leave it voluntarily by planning for it, and they'll leave standing up. But at the end of the day, if they haven't sold it, they're going to leave laying down. That's, kind of a funny euphemism we use with this to try to get it to resonate with people.
Yeah.
And I taught a course at a local college for the small business administration. And to your point, one of the first topics we covered in this course was these are all young companies, either early stage, startup, etc. And one of the key things I tried to get them to understand is that you start a company with the end in mind, because there will be an end. But the challenge business owners face, again, most are small companies, but we've dealt with 30, 40, $50 million companies that were fully staffed. And what happens, it's human nature. We see that business owners spend about 95% of their time, maybe more, working in their business versus working on their business. So they don't understand the difference between the two, because they're focused on day-to-day operations, top-line revenue, structuring the company so that they are minimizing their tax obligations and creating a profit. And most of these are passed through legal entities, S corps, LLCs. So they're taking a distribution at the end of the year, and that's where their focus is. And they don't understand the counterintuitive nature of solely focusing the company with those criteria in mind versus making strategic decisions that will create maximum value and or sellability when they decide to sell the business.
That I've seen quite a bit of that by experience as well. So it makes a lot of sense and completely understand what you mean there. How about as far as the getting into the actual leadership component of running a business? You mentioned some of the areas of everything running through the business owner, or the business owner holds all the knowledge up here, right?
Right.
Maybe the lack of systems or process, knowledge capture or knowledge sharing across the business. Like, anything else you could share on either what you've seen or how you recommend business owners get help with that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. A quick story on that. We were, one of my partners and I were in discussion with a business owner. This guy was super impressive, crazy smart, and he was making money so fast, I'm not sure he even knew how much he had.
Yeah.
Really successful business. And one of the questions we asked him is, well, in your organization, you had a 1-800 number. And again, for us to assess the sellability of his company, we ask a lot of questions, starting with, why do you want to sell now? Because they have to be really motivated to sell. But when we got to the question of when the phone rings from a potential customer, who answered that phone? And he kind of sat back and smiled and proudly said, well, I do. They all call my cell phone. And we're like, oh man, this is, again, an extremely successful company, but it was so dependent on him. I don't know if we would be able to create a successful transition. So that's kind of an example of it. But the real challenge, again, as I mentioned, these businesses are all pass-through entities. So if they invest in the business, that's that much smaller of a distribution they're going to take a year in. And again, they don't understand the correlation between investing into the business and the return on that investment from a value creation standpoint. And the primary place is if they want to create a succession plan. Most business owners don't delegate well, especially if they're first generation, because the success is based on their ability to work like crazy, oftentimes 7 days a week, as well as, control every aspect of the business. So they don't delegate well or know how to delegate. even if they do hire a number two person, which is usually a reasonably expensive investment to make. But again, that's where value creation comes from. So you look at those two factors together, and that's a big reason why they don't have succession or they have significant owner dependency.
Makes sense. Cameron, let's talk about the exit. Raincatcher's role in the deal. Can you walk us through like what Raincatcher does, especially in the context of the lens of a business owner and what that means to them?
Yeah, well, first I'll say, Graham, that most people think of investment bankers, if they even know what we do at all, as people who are solely focused on dollars and cents and numbers and percentages and being hard-nosed contract negotiators. And that's all true. But honestly, that's only about half of the business. Or that's actually about a third of the business. So there are two other portions. One is we play the role that we kind of jokingly call match.com. So business owners have great pride in their company. And of course they want to sell, but they all have, and I've never met one that didn't, have significant loyalty to their employees and their customers. That was one of the things I found surprising. They want to make sure their customers are properly taken care of. So who they sell to matters a lot. It's not just the dollars and cents, how much total money they're going to get. I've seen cases where business owners chose a bid that was lower than the top bid because they were more aligned culturally, management style-wise, mission, vision, values with another buyer. So that matters a lot. So that's why when I mentioned earlier that we ask business owners, why do you want to sell? We get to know our clients personally. I still talk to a number of them because once we close the deal, we're done with that client. It's not going to be a reoccurring client. But we still stay in touch because we spend hours and hours together, either in person or on the phone. So you've got your negotiating and financial analysis part of the job. You've got your match.com or your match.com focus. But the other part is what I refer to as the Dr. Phil work. So selling a business is a long-term process. A lot of business owners wake up and say, hey, I want to sell my company. I think it should be done in a month. But the national average, no matter how big or small the company, and no matter what industry, is about 9 to 10 months. We try to prepare our clients by helping them to understand that selling a business is a full-time job on top of a full-time job. And there are a lot of things that occur in that process that are completely foreign to any business owner who has never sold a company before. It is an emotional roller coaster ride. There's periods of real highs that, oh man, I'm going to get a ton of money, to real lows when barriers are entered through the diligence process or the price gets renegotiated for some particular reason. So that's the role we play. I've sometimes talked to my clients in certain stages 4, 5, 10 times a day. We help explain these foreign concepts and foreign legal terms to them because it can be really intimidating. And I've helped my clients from not jumping off the cliff because they just reach a point of frustration where they can become their own worst enemy. So having an expert work with you who is going to go through the process on a non-emotional basis, because their company is their baby. It's a very emotional thing. So those are some of the keys, but we gather all of their diligence information up front. We call that sell-side diligence, and that's a ton of work for them. We ask for over 100 pieces of information because we know buyers are going to want that. We create very professional marketing books, which we call a CIM, C-I-M, for confidential information memorandum. We build strategic potential buyer lists of strategic buyers, financial buyers, family office buyers, and we market the company aggressively to those buyers, talk to many of them by video call to vet them again, that match.com part of the job. And we take our clients through an indication of interest letter process, and we explain, because every deal has certain criteria. It's not all about the price. Sometimes the price isn't really what the realized value is going to be. So there's the enterprise value, total value, there's deal terms, deal structure, buyer fit, and our best assessment of whether that buyer is actually economically capable of doing the deal. They've got access to the equity and they've got access to the debt. Many firms will get a letter of intent offer, get that signed, and then they step back and wait for the deal to close. Our kind of business is eat what you kill. So we get paid when a deal closes. If it doesn't close, we don't get paid. We invest 200 to 300 man hours of time in any one deal. And that's not just, for example, me. Oftentimes I work with a partner and one of our broker advisor. We're all investing that kind of money in the process. So we recommend M&A attorneys, tax experts, and we hold our client's hand through every step. So we're on every call with the attorneys. On my second computer screen, I've got a complex equity rollover contract right now that when we're finished with our podcast here, I'm going to be reading and talking to my client about what that means for him in layman's terms. So we're there until a wire transfer hits their bank account.
Very nice. Thanks for walking through that, Cameron.
Sure.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the volume we're talking about here in a company like Raincatcher or personally for yourself. Like whatever you're able to share from like a deal flow size, like how many deals do you typically close in a year or have closed overall? Like whatever you're able to share to give just some context to the size of your scope and expertise.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. So our firm Raincatcher, we have 16 team members. I am a partner. I am one of 5 partners in the firm, and I'm a managing director. We're all hands-on operators in the process. As I mentioned, we're based out in Denver, and we're a bit unique in that we are affiliated with what's called a FINRA, F-I-N-R-A, registered broker-dealer. So if you have a wealth manager or a stockbroker, they must be a registered rep with FINRA, which is part of the compliance operation under the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you take all the testing and everything. So that's a bit of a differentiator for us. But as I mentioned, it's a 200 to 300 man-hour process over 9 months. And we try not to get stretched too thin because we want to be immediately available for our clients, because a lot of things happen real fast and you have to be real responsive. So ideally, we're only focused on 3 to 5 deals at a time in order to properly serve our clients. So our firm will do, I think, 45 or 50 deals this year. I can tell you we're thrilled because the market is improving substantially. 2024 was a really tough year. It was a transition year coming out of COVID. The interest rates were on a fast rise and nobody knew what to do. But this year we're on a record pace. We've signed up more engagements than any time in our 11-year history. So we're pretty thrilled about that. And I can't say that we're seeing trends in any one particular industry. It's pretty much across the board. And I've seen a couple of recent studies. I think one I saw 2 days ago from Citizens Bank is that this market is really picking up this year. Interest rates are down. People have kind of settled in on this whole tariff question, which was a huge factor because of the uncertainty around how they were going to impact individual businesses. And, when people are unsure, they just pull back. So it's a good market right now.
That's great to hear. Very, very interesting. And that scope really helps give a little bit a picture for an owner on what kind of expertise that Raincatcher is bringing. When you're talking to all these different business owners, what is the one thing that you say that kind of stops them in their tracks and really like wakes them up, or is kind of that kind of aha moment in this process of thinking about selling their business?
I said a few things. Number one, and it's almost a joke to a certain extent, is every business owner ever thinks their business is worth far more than it really is. So when we first start talking with a client, we'll sign an NDA with them. We'll have them send us the last 3 years of monthly income statements and balance sheets. One of my partners is a licensed CPA, and he spent 15 years in the audit practice with KPMG. So we use what's called a secure digital data room. They upload all that information. Andy does a deep dive and creates what's called a recasted set of financials, the way a buyer would look at it, and an adjusted EBITDA number. And we have access to databases, plus our general knowledge around business valuation. So we'll do our work. We'll set up a brief call with this potential client. We don't charge anything for this because it's as much in that client's interest as it is in ours. Again, if we're investing that much time over that long period of time for a business that's not going to be sellable, that's a lose-lose for both sides. But we'll present that information that we've learned from the client, and we'll give them a valuation range. Low end of where we think the deal could close, the midpoint, which we think is probably the most likely range is going to sell, and then a high end if we can really knock the cover off the ball for that client. And we go to market, and if that meets their expectations, and I've had clients say, no, I'm going to have to wait another year or two. I'm not going to make enough money because these deals are valued on a multiple of adjusted EBITDA. And if the company's doing $5 million in EBITDA and the multiple is 4 times, and that's a $20 million valuation, they say, no, I can't live on $20 million after taxes. I've had potential clients say that to me. I'm thinking, well, I could live pretty darn well on that. But, again, it's a personal decision, and we provide them with the information they need to make one of the, if not the most and biggest decision of their lives. And we'll respect that, and we'll hang in there with them, touch base on off and on basis just to maintain the connection. And when they're ready to sell, we're going to be there for them. So, that's how that process works. And if they like what we have to say, then we sign an engagement and we go to work.
Very nice. So as you look at 2026, it sounds like you work over across so many different industries, but do you see some industries really hotter than others, or anything that you can share there that may be relevant, especially from the business owner lens?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There are some industries where, let's take a simple example. So for the last about 4 years, maybe 5, HVAC companies have been at the top of the food chain. I spoke at an industry conference for HVACs about 3 years ago. And they're HVAC company owners. And I did 2 sessions, and each one of those sessions was literally standing room only. It wasn't me personally, it was the topic that I was covering, and that was things we're talking about here today, Graham, around preparing your company for sale, how that process is going to work, standing room only, because they're getting inundated, these owners, with calls from the opposite side of my business. I'm a sell side investment banker. There are buy side representatives who get paid by private equity firms or strategics or large family offices that are looking for certain kind of companies, or they'll be contacted directly by these individuals. Some of them get 5 or 10 calls or emails or Federal Express letters every single week. And if a HVAC business owner called me today and said, hey, Cam, I want you to sell my company, I would think I'd died and gone to heaven, because all that other work I described that we have to do, I've got to use an old-fashioned term, Rolodex, full of business buyers looking to buy I could make 25 phone calls and have 25 offers, and they're all doing what's called a roll-up. So they're buying as many of these companies as they can. So and the roll-up is called a platform. So the estimates are that there are at least 40 investment platforms looking for HVAC businesses. And the key attractive aspect of it is HVAC systems always break. So there's going to be a perpetual need for maintenance and repair. Anything that involves maintenance or repair is a hot commodity. And second, companies like HVAC have what's called reoccurring revenue, meaning that they sell these maintenance contracts. I have one, my wife and I have one for our home. And a guy from an HVAC company comes out once and checks our air conditioner, and then comes back out and checks our furnace, and he maintains contact, and we just pay money every month as an automatic credit card deduction. And so that high level of recurring revenue is extremely attractive for revenue predictability. And of course, it's almost pure profit. So HVAC companies, plumbing companies, electrical companies, pest control companies, roofing companies that are doing maintenance, replacement, and repair. To distinguish between roofing companies that put roofs on new construction housing or just on new construction commercial buildings. Because again, that's a project-based business that is, it can have some real ups and downs in the process. So those are areas that are really attractive. Anything that requires feet on the street or a fleet of vehicles. The other thing I like about it in this day and age is if it ever occurs, it's probably going to be a really long time before AI can replace the physical presence of an experienced technician or repairman on the job. So, those are all hot topics. SaaS platform software companies, digital related companies, all are very attractive. And then I handle a lot of our construction industry practice, and there's a lot of platform plays doing roll-ups for road maintenance and repair, whether it is what's called mill and fill, where they're removing and grinding off 2 inches of asphalt and laying down new asphalt, or they're laying down a material called slurry seal. Very attractive. I could contact 10 or 15 firms that are interested in that market.
Very interesting. HVAC is still hot, huh?
Oh, man.
The thing the last years. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it makes a lot of sense, though, especially like what you're talking about with physical work, compared to AI and all that. So we talked about quite a bit, Cameron. What would you like to touch on that we haven't touched on yet? Anything come to mind that we're kind of missing from this conversation?
Yeah, I think on a more general basis, as it relates to your audience interested in leadership thinking, I've done a few lectures for not for the organization called the Young Presidents Club, but comparable types of groups with a kind of 35 to 45-year-old business owner. Either, they started the company or they're second generation. And one of the things a few of the things that are things I've learned from running companies. I ran a company with 2,000 employees plus, and I think we were in 23 U.S. cities of 5 foreign countries. I ran that business. It was about a $400 million company. I started a company with backing from J.P. Morgan Chase Bank's private equity group. We built that from my kitchen table. About 3 years to 120 million with over 500 employees. So a few things I've learned. I mentioned early on, servant leadership. I am a big believer in supporting key talent. I have always believed and practiced the fact that I liked to be the dumbest person in the room. I really liked being surrounded by really intelligent people in each of their specialized skill sets, whether CFO or CIO or HR executive, head of marketing, etc. And when I would interview these folks, my last question for them always was, are you afraid to disagree with me? Because I saw no value in having yes men or yes women. And of course, that would kind of set them back a little bit. But I say, because I don't get it right all the time. And my ultimate goal is for it to be right. I may not agree with you all the time, but I'm going to listen to you. And I would say well more than half the time, I either changed my perspective or I adjusted it to meet the input that they had to offer. And one of the other things I always thought was key was to get to know the individual as a person and to listen to them and understand how they're motivated and manage them in the language and style that they need. I was used to say, if I managed my salespeople like I managed my artists and writers, I would have no sales.
Right.
And vice versa. If I managed my writers and artists like I managed my salespeople, I wouldn't even have any employees because they work in a very different way. And there's so many managers who say it's my way or the highway. And they have one style. And if you like it, fine. If you don't, fine. But that's not how the world works today. And you could create really strong, loyal employees if you understand how to manage them. And I'll lastly say, this turnaround company I did, people were scared to death to take risk for fear of failure. And every company meeting, I would stand up and I would remind them that we can't advance and grow if we don't experiment and try new things. Failure is not a sin. It's not something you're going to be reprimanded for. We just need to understand that if we're going to fail, we need to figure out and fail fast.
Fail fast, experimentation. That's how you iterate and grow, right? I completely
That's
get
right.
it. How can people connect with you, Cameron, or follow Raincatcher? What's the best way?
Great, thanks. Yeah, they can easily reach me at my email address, cameron.bishop@raincatcher.com. Our URL is raincatcher.com, or I'm easily accessible on LinkedIn as well.
Very good. Before we wrap up, what do you want those you have worked with to say about your impact on them, Cameron?
Well, I would hope that they would say that they were able to learn a few things, and some from mistakes I made or from places where we were successful. And I would hope that they would say, as I mentioned, that I valued them, I listened to them, and they had significant impact on our company because of that.
Very nice. Cameron Bishop, Raincatcher. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate you sharing.
That's great. Thanks for having me.
Take care.